I spent a lot of time over the last few years working with, before joining Lead in Agile, working with organizations where I was CIO or CTO, responsible for delivering on, business value to market, driving revenue. In that capacity, responsible for driving transformation and improving organizations, building capabilities, driving operational excellence. Over the years, what I realized after spending 35 years or something like that in industry, driving revenue, driving operational excellence, figuring out how to improve capabilities to improve revenue, decided that sort of organizational building was really my passion. What does it take to create organizations that can perform up to their potential or beyond? And that's when I joined Lead in Agile. I've only been here for about 3.5 years, maybe it's going on 4, but I've worked with Mike and Dennis, for forever, since Dennis had hair. We've all, where's Dennis? Is he out there? Yeah. Since Dennis had hair, we've been working together, and so this was my passion. I came over and joined, the team here to spend time with clients like you all, really kind of get into the heart of what does it take for us to build that high-performing organization, sustainably create the results that our customers want, that our boards want, and become the kind of organization that we want to be. One dimension of that is this, we've called it a few different things today, and I didn't necessarily expect it to come up, but since it did, we've called it the Agile Transformation Office. We've talked about, Chris did a good job of unpacking, is it something like the office of the CIO? Is it a business transformation office? We're going to explore some of those things today, kind of walking first through what are some of the capabilities, why are they supporting or responding to a need for change, a call to change, and then kind of how do we look at it going forward into sustainability. All right, here's what we're going to do. So viable business strategy begins with the ability to change and adapt, but now and for always. That's something that we're going to emphasize and re-emphasize throughout this talk. It's not just about one and done transformation. We've got what we want. Now let's celebrate and go home. So in order to do that, let's talk about why do we need a new approach to change? What must become true for that to be realistic and for us to meet the goal? How might we pull all of that off? Then I'm going to get into some of the details on the capabilities that we might want to have. And then where do we go from here? Why do we need a new approach to change? So are your transformation efforts producing the benefits that you want? Raise your hand for me if your transformation efforts are producing the benefits that you want today. Sometimes, yeah, I'm sure sometimes, but not too many hands went up. And I thought that was a safe question. Those questions can be a trap for a speaker, right? But I thought it was a safe question because you're all here talking about transformation, which means you're probably looking for ways to get better at transformation. So I think generally we would all answer that question, no, generally speaking. In pockets, yes, and tons of examples where it's working well in many of our organizations. But as a fundamental capability that we have as an organization, I think generally no. And for us to really rethink that, Chris has said this today, Dennis said this today, I'm pretty sure Mike said it in his opening comments. Like, we've got to accept that all organizations are perfectly designed to get the results that they're currently getting. And the same thing is true with our current approach to transformation. Like the way that we're approaching transformation, our ideas about the design of how we're pursuing transformation across the organization are producing exactly the results that they are currently designed to produce. So if we want to get different results, then we need to take a step back and really think about how is it that we're approaching change. If we want different results, we have to change the way that we're doing things. And as we think about how that applies to transformation, so change the way we're doing things, change the way we're transforming, then it seemed like there's 3 big things that we have to focus on. We've got to think about ways to create greater alignment. Across the organization, there's challenges with things pulling in different directions in terms of where you want to go, things pulling in different directions in terms of how we might get there and what different people believe about what the right way to get there is. Alignment is a big problem from top to bottom, north to south and east to west. So we need to think about ways to address alignment. We need to think about ways to accelerate the impact of our change, make changes faster, and make sure that they're producing greater results faster. And lastly, we need to think about ways to prove that that's actually happening. I don't know about you guys, but I bet you all can relate to, throughout my career, I've seen so many examples where so much money is spent on change across the organization. And you could step back and look at it, and it's competing. Like that investment and this investment were almost going to cancel each other out. And they certainly weren't going to fit together. And we weren't going to be able to get the results out of it that we needed to get. This business of being able to prove that we have the ability to measure the impact, the business impact, the top line and bottom line business impact of the changes that we're making is a critical goal. So as we start to think about how to do that, we've got to also start advancing our mind towards an idea that I said this a minute ago. It's not one and done. That business of creating alignment, accelerating change, proving the impact, like that's not something that we race to the end and now it's done. Transformation isn't something that we race to the end and now it's done. But that word might suggest that, right? Like Amy said about projects to products. Does the word transformation maybe conjure up the thought that it's something that we do and then it's done? Like transformation, what does it mean? Maybe it's lots of change. It's big change. It's concentrated change now, racing up a hill and capturing a flag, and then it's going to be done, right? That word, am I right about that? Does the word transformation sort of suggest something that we're going to do and then be done? I have that sense. So maybe we just stop thinking about it as transformation and start thinking about it instead as this need to continuously adapt, something that we're going to have to be able to do forever. We're going to have to forever be able to create and maintain that alignment. We're going to have to forever figure out ways to accelerate our ability to produce better results. And we're going to have to forever figure out ways that we're going to prove that the work that we're doing to build up the organization, the work that we're doing to invest in capability development, the work that we're doing to create operational excellence, whatever words that you want to use, the words that we're doing to build the foundation of a first-class business that always meets and exceeds the needs of our customers and the needs of our company. We're going to have to do that forever. So as your markets and customers evolve, like this has come up several times today, for us to achieve the performance that we want, we have to understand our markets and our customers, what they're needing, what they're offering us to be able to help them solve. We have to think about our systems and capabilities and teams, and we have to get those two things lined up. In order for us to be able to perform in the market, we have to align markets and customers to systems and teams and capabilities. Well, since our markets and customers are always going to change, and since our capabilities are always going to evolve, because we agree we have to continually improve, continuously adapt, then we're going to constantly be finding ourselves out of alignment, right? That moved and that moved, so we're constantly finding ourselves out of alignment. So in order for us to tackle this problem, I believe we have to establish the ability to adapt continuously and do so now and forever. I can barely see a few of you, but somebody tell me, does that resonate? You're buying it? I can't see your faces and it makes me nervous. I see a few heads, okay. Thanks for that. All right, so what must become true? There's a lot of words on this slide. I'm not expecting to drain everything on this slide, but just wanted to keep kind of building this perspective of the problem and why it might be something for us to pay attention to going forward. So in alignment, a lot of times today, so different leaders, departments, consultants have different views of where we're going and how to get there. Chris and Amy did something at Elevate Agile our last time that I thought was just a really great way of telling the story. Chris and Amy both talked about in the context of Ford how when they started on this journey, you had these leaders with their compass pointing over this way, and these leaders with their compass pointing over this way, and these going this way, and then you had these department managers with their compasses, and then even better, you had this consultancy with this compass and this consultancy with this compass. Like everybody's moving in different directions. And that really sung to me. That had been my experience for 35 years in industry. I'd seen this happen over and over and over again. So different people pulling in different directions, and the organization looking for where they need to go, just getting worn out because of the change fatigue. And change fatigue in part because there's so much change and it's not rationalized and it's not delivering what you wanted to deliver, but also just because we've been doing it for so long and not feeling success, not feeling the results. In many cases we are, but not across the board. So what we want tomorrow under Align, shared vision for both the ways that we work. So how does the system of delivery work to execute on strategy? So alignment across the ways of working, the ways of delivering more value to those customers in those markets, but also the ways of changing. Alignment around the ways of going about bringing about the change across the organization. Wishing for the new way of working isn't going to get us there. Executive edicts aren't going to get us there. We have to have a systematic way to go about making change, and we have to agree. We have to come into alignment on how we're going to go about doing that. What are the priorities? In what order? What's the systems? What's the mechanisms? What's the methodology for making change? And we have to create engagement and support for vision and approach. Accelerate. I really appreciated getting the chance to sit back and listen to Dennis and Chris today talk about, I'll just call it the wheel, and all the perspectives that need to be stitched together in the organization. And then Chris, the summits, sort of the organizational journey that has to play out. You sit back and think about what it really means to identify all of the components of the organization, all of the considerations of the organization, all of the concerns, and how to put them together in a way, how to assemble that puzzle and all of its pieces in a way that's really going to meet the needs of the organization. It's a lot to take into account, and we have to create the capability within our organization to take that into account and to build that, let me just call it a blueprint, build that design. Here I called it precision of design. Create that precision of design that allows us to reliably produce the results that we really want to have, and do that with fast and decisive execution in the implementation of those design decisions. I don't know if you would buy this one or not, but sometimes when I think about this aspect of what I'm trying to talk about, it's almost like historically there's not really been a chief architect for the organization. When I ran architecture for a long time in my history, then we came to really appreciate this notion of when large-scale enterprise products just go about their way without some thinking about the direction and some thinking about the architecture, that creates guardrails and allows the designs to emerge in a way that creates the greatest effectiveness. When we allow for there to just be accidental architecture, then we don't get where we want. We actually we accelerate entropy, and we experience greater chaos and loss of capability in those products, right? So accidental architecture leads us to an inability to create the performance and market that we want. And I think the same thing is true with our organizations. What we're really sort of talking about throughout the day, a lot of what we're talking about is organizational architecture. I like to say, and this is another one, I don't know if everybody buys it, but I like to say the number one most important product in the organization is the organization, and how the organization works, and how it understands what its customers' needs, and how it delivers that value to those customers. The number one product in the organization is the organization itself. And we need to put in place the ability to be super intentional about the designs of the ways of working, the designs of continually adapting those ways of working to optimize our ability to serve our markets. And then lastly, improve. So much of what I've seen in transformation over the years is it's just soft. It's soft notions of what's valuable. Somebody said it earlier today, I think. The number of teams that I've trained in some new methodology or something like this. And we've got to go way beyond that. We've got to get to a place where we're able to think about results in terms that prove the impact. And when we're talking about proving the impact, it has to be in terms of what really matters to a business, which for all of us in here, I think this is true for all of us, we're working in a for-profit business. And so at the end of the day, what matters most has to be measured somehow in dollars, right? So this proving the impact in some way, it has to be in the context of what's the financial impact to the organization. I loved John McLaughlin and John Markowski's message earlier today about the recognition of the amount of work being done in the system that was not contributing to the financial results of the organization, and then the increase in throughput, which allowed them to bring more targeted value through, and the way that they were able to put dollar amounts to that. And those dollar amounts led to the ability to convince the senior-most leadership to go and do the next sets of changes that were necessary. That was that shift from a 100-person portfolio to a 300-person portfolio. So business impacting results and evidence of that impact, both in the short term and the long term. That's the other thing that we see all the time. I bet every one of you has experienced this. We've got this grand vision for change, and it's going to be great. Trust me. Just in 3 years, it's going to be great. And so here's this great number. I'm going to get you back this $300 million in 3 years. So trust me, we can't do that, right? We've got to be able to deliver short-term results. Like this month, this quarter, we have to be able to deliver those financial results and then track that progress and continually prove that progress over time. So how can we pull all that off? Spend all of that time to try to convince you that there's a problem that we need to solve. I think you all already were convinced, so you can let me know later if I convinced you or not. So how do we go about solving that? Here's a way to think about it. I heard at least Mike and Chris both say today something like, we are discovering better ways to create impact and change by working with clients like you all and creating impact and change. And so this isn't a story of, hey, we've got the blueprint, it's all figured out, go do this, and life's going to be great. That's not the story. But here's some ways to think about what we have to do to create the ability to sustain continuous adaptation. And I think that there's this notion of setting up, and Chris said this, setting up a portfolio of capabilities. Those 5 or 6 octagons, those 5 or 6 shapes there, setting up this portfolio of capabilities that is attached straight up to the executive team and the vision and strategy that they have for where the organization needs to go. It's on all of us, and some of those are in this room, so including you, on all of us to make sure that executive alignment, that executive engagement is in place, and we set this up so that we've got executive-led, strategically aligned, and deeply integrated capabilities in that portfolio that create the foundation for us to be able to sustainably, continuously adapt. All right, let's jump into each one of those. So I'm going to start. Oh, and did you see what I was trying to indicate here? That vision and strategy, that executive-led thing, strategically aligned. And I'm trying to suggest it has to connect across all of these. So it comes from this vision and strategy and how we establish that in-state vision and roadmap. It comes from that, but then all the rest of this has to attach to that in meaningful and integrated ways. So let's take each one of them apart for just a minute. So vision and strategy. This is a lot of what Chris and Dennis talked about today. It's establishing that in-state vision and the precision in design, like I talked about, in that operating model, including the understanding of the transformation strategy and, very importantly, the priorities. Everything can't change at the same time. And it's like something I see happening all the time now on so many different clients that I'm working in. You know, people are seeing the future so much better than they could 5 years ago. But then they're wanting to do it all at once, and you just can't make all these changes all at once. So getting really clear about the priorities and the sequencing and how these things build. When you think about the elements of the wheel that Dennis went through, and you think about the organizational summits, those things are intentionally building on one another. So you're one by one layering the capabilities in the organization, building to what you really want to have. So that vision and strategy and getting all the way from in-state vision and precision and design, but all the way to clarity of priorities and roadmap is essential. It's got to start with that executive alignment. And kind of what we're setting up is this idea, I always have this picture in my head of connecting the yoke. I think that's the thing you call the front. Is that the steering wheel in the plane? Is that right? Connecting that to the rudders. Because so often we've got this thing going on where leadership has got a great idea about where they want to go to and they can see it. But there's not anything connecting that to the rudders to actually make the plane move, to actually make the organization move. So this is the beginning of setting up the ability to connect the yoke to the rudders and actually be able to execute on that transformation strategy or that strategy for continuous adaptation. Next category. So enablement, analytics, and insights. I'm not going to unpack each of these too much, but I'm going to jump into an example on the next slide. But these are some of these foundational capabilities that prop up the organization and its ability to go about making change, seeing the results, understanding the impact, using that impact to make decisions about what you're going to do next, and onward. And let me unpack that just a little bit. So thinking about tooling to insights, you know, probably every one of you has had conversations about what you're doing today or what you're going to do tomorrow with Agile tooling. Amy in her talk mentioned Rally. Some of you are running maybe version 1. Some of you are maybe running Jira. Maybe you're running entirely different tools. It doesn't really matter what the tooling is. Sometimes we get ourselves focused on the tooling from the standpoint of sort of task management or something like that. We really want to elevate our thinking. We want to take our thinking from tooling is just this task management thing to it's providing us the ability to have organizational assessments. Like where are we in the teams moving through base camps, or where are we in the organization moving through summits? It's got to provide us the capability of doing individual assessments. What skills do our people have? How does that match the skills that we need to have according to our transformation strategy and our job architecture and our performance management systems? It's got to provide us the ability to measure the performance of the system of delivery, but also the system of transformation. How well are we making change? And like I talked about a minute ago, it's got to give us that upper right teal box. It's got to give us the ability to put all of that in the context of financial and business value metrics. So the tooling that we're talking about, what we're really talking about isn't install tooling and get tasks and get transparency. We do want all of that. But what we're really trying to do is create the ability to gain insights into the organization and understand, are we achieving what we thought we were going to be able to achieve, and what are we going to do next? That's what we want to be able to do with tooling. All right, let me jump to the next category. If you're able to see it, if you're following along in the top right-hand corner, you can see I'm kind of walking around that set of capabilities that I introduced on the first slide. So let's go to this one that was in the middle: talent, excellence, and workforce readiness. I think this is an area I've been thinking a lot about over the last few months. And let me set it up to start with this idea of we need to be able to engage our people when we're going to go through transformation, and make them part of something, even before they are actually part of something, maybe. And I'm gonna unpack what I mean by that here in just a minute. Maybe they aren't actively changing yet, but they see that the organization is changing or it's about to. We need to be able to engage those people and let them know where it's going to go. And then, of course, engagement continues on forever. We need to enable our people to gain experience. We need to put them in a position to be able to, in an apprenticeship type mode, gain the new skills and expertise that they're going to need to support the organization's ability to perform at the highest level. We've got to do that in a way that allows them to gain that experience with psychological safety. A lot of those people have spent 10, 15, 20, 30 years in career. They're the experts at what they're doing right now. They don't want to let go of being the expert. That causes a lack of readiness to receive new understanding and new skills. We need to create the ability to give them psychological safety in that experience. And then, having given them the opportunity to gain that experience, and now they're performing in a new way of working, in a new system of delivery, we need to take them along a path of continual excellence. This continual excellence is back to, again, supporting our continual adaptation and continual growth. To do that, we really need to think about a set of capabilities that includes, I'm going to just run through this, training, job architecture, professional development, guilds, performance management, workforce strategy, leadership development. Now, what we should start seeing there is every one of those things exists somewhere in the organization today, right? Most of those exist maybe in HR. They might exist in HR and the COO's organization, or there and in the CFO's organization. Some of them exist probably today in the office of the CIO, if that's relevant in your organization, or under the COO. But the chances of all of those things fitting together in the way that we need them to is pretty slim. And the chances of them currently providing us the foundation that we need to be able to grow the kind of organization that we need is almost zero, at least in my experience. There's probably exceptions. We know what happens as soon as you say always, right? So let's talk a little bit more about one angle on this. We'll jump into the OCM communications and safety category. So here we've got the ability to create a professional organizational change management strategy and plan, and understand how we are embracing the organization and how we're going to bring them into alignment and enthusiasm for change. Understand how we're going to evaluate ongoing the stakeholders of all of our change across all of the organization. And based on our understanding of those stakeholders and our understanding of their influence, make deliberate decisions about how we engage them and how we move to create more opening, to widen the rails, to create more clearing that allows for more change to happen in the way that it needs to happen. And of course, branding, marketing, and communications, sort of table stakes. But something that's been interesting to us lately is this idea of, especially in the beginning, that thing I was talking about around engagement at the start. Like when you're just about to get a bunch of change underway. Maybe it's the first time you're starting to embark on agile transformation, or you've sort of gone through a phase and you're to a state, and then 6 months later, you're about to start up another stage or something like that, and you're about to activate the organization, or you would like to activate the organization and do so in a way that brings them into engagement, create enthusiasm and support for the change. As we think about how to do that, let me just use one example. We've got in one. This is going on at 2 clients right now, but I'm gonna picture one, and I won't name them. But we're working with their HR and transformation teams to get really clear on the definitions of the roles within the system of delivery and the way to communicate those roles in the context that feels good to the people in that organization. Those people aren't landing on a team yet. The teams haven't even been designed. But they know this is coming, so we can talk with them about what the roles are. We can talk with them about what the characteristics, the personal characteristics and traits or intrinsics might be that make it likely for them to be successful in that role. And we can talk about all of the skills that will be necessary, the whole skills matrix and the way to evaluate their current performance in the context of that skills matrix, get them comfortable with, okay, I see myself in some place in the future. The organizational change is a little less scary to me now because I see I could be that role or I could be that role. That role needs these things, that role needs these things. That sort of matches, who I am and what I've done and what I would like to do next. And then we lay out for them customized learning paths, individualized learning paths that for each one of them, let them see a way towards when it's their turn, like when the whistle blows and they're given the chance to get onto this team. The whistle blows and the coach calls them to enter the field. Now they've got the foundational learning in place and they're excited and ready to jump in as a member of that team. So there's things along those lines that we can do in this OCM and communication space that are not just general change management, not just general communication, but one-on-one individualized tailoring of messaging and ways to put people into motion and give them a sense of some amount of control over where they're going that serves them and serves the organization. So as you think about that, as you unpack that safety, you just and I sort of hit on each one of these bullets, I think, but let me just run through them for a second. As you unpack that thing around safety, we're hearing and understanding the vision and strategy. We're helping the individuals, each of our employees, to understand and relate to that vision and strategy. We're helping them to understand the roles. We're helping them to see themselves in those roles, understand the skills and the opportunities that they have personally, individually for growth, understand their intrinsics, their personality characteristics that make it likely for them to be successful or maybe would challenge them from being successful in a role. And then based on that, their understanding and their interest, giving learning paths and ongoing learning that let them get activated and moving in the direction that we're trying to get the organization moving. All right, coaching. Amy did a great job of talking about coaching, and whether from partners or grown internally in your organization, sourcing, acquiring, onboarding, again, assessing and developing. It's actually very similar to that assessing and developing of other individuals in the system of delivery. In this case, assessing and developing coaches who can sit with teams and build partnership to get them to safely move through the process of change and get comfortable executing in a new system of delivery. And then the ongoing support for those coaches. And you see what winds up happening there, right? So I talked about engagement, experience, and excellence. So engagement, we talked about that safety offering and how we could, through creating safety, create greater engagement and activate the organization. Now with this coaching, we can create the opportunity for psychological safety around new performance in a role as people are apprentices in those roles. So they're gaining experience. And I'm going to drop back into the talent one for just a second so I can jump over there to excellence. You can see what happens then. I talked about enablement and getting the foundation in place. I talked about engagement, getting people activated and then keeping them activated and engaged. Then experience, they're gaining experience, they're apprentices, and then ongoing excellence. And that winds up creating this layers, right? We built out the organizational enablement. We used that to start creating engagement. As people became engaged and felt confident about moving forward and they're activated, they're unstuck, we started giving them opportunities for experience through coaching and being members of teams as apprentices. And then with the ongoing learning capabilities stitched into the performance management systems and the L&D systems and the job architecture systems, then we can propel the organization forward in ongoing excellence individually and collectively. All right, and so where do we go from here? I think it's maybe something like this. I'm going to jump back to something I said a little while ago. If we want verifiable outcomes and measurable business impact, we have to change the way we approach continuous adaptation. We have to change the way that we approach organizational excellence. Melissa's sitting in the room. She talked with you earlier today. A lot of this is probably sounding really familiar to Melissa, I bet. Melissa ran an organization for me many years ago. I think it's about 5 years ago, but I think in large-scale transformation years, it's 45 years ago or something like that. It was called Organizational Excellence and Capability Development. It was the office of the CIO. We just didn't call it that. But it was an organization that was designed for the purposes of creating this foundation that, this might be silly, y'all tell me later if this is silly and I'll stop using it, created this foundation. It created fertile soil in which the organization could continue to grow. So rather than thinking about the ability to go and manhandle the organization into a new place, I think that this office of the CIO or this business transformation office becomes this set of capabilities in an intentionally managed portfolio, executive-led and strategically aligned, that focuses on stewardship and creating fertile soil through very intentional capabilities that get people to move, and get people to move where we want them to move, in the way that we want them to move. And that set of capabilities is deeply integrated so that they're serving the organization. So as your markets and customers evolve and your capabilities evolve, then we must continually adapt, right? Markets and customers evolve, what they need. Our systems, our teams, our capabilities evolve. Those two things changing put pressure on us. They force us to think about the world as something that must continuously adapt. And that asks us to put in place this foundational portfolio that sustains continuous adaptation for today, but for always. And I think that this Agile Transformation Office, or the Business Transformation Office, or the Office of the CIO, or the Organizational Excellence and Capability Development, whatever the name might become as this continues to evolve, it doesn't matter. But that thing, that portfolio of capabilities that creates that foundation, that leads people to move the way that we need them to move, and builds and constantly reimagines the future organization and moves the organization along a path to get to exactly there, is where we need to go. So I'll wrap up with this one. In all of that, we want to create the ability to call our shot and demonstrate control. But you see how we're doing that in a way, or at least the way I'm seeing it, we're doing that in a way that is about stewardship. We are, in fact, controlling where the organization is going to go, but we did that in a way that made people want to go there, created the capabilities that made it most likely that they would go there, and in so doing, we called our shot and we demonstrated control. All right, thank you all.